Journalists are always at the forefront of the information front. Their duty is to provide viewers and readers with objective information from the places of events. There are rules of inviolability of journalists, medics, and rescuers, even during conflicts. But Russian criminals systematically violate them, carrying out targeted attacks on employees of the press, newsrooms, and TV channels. That's what a fragment can do. Small. I have it in the editorial office. Computers are on the ground. Monitors are broken. Office phones are hacked. The fragment came in, that is, it came in here from the window. The fragment passed right through. If people were sitting here, there would be a pile of corpses. This is the issue of the newspaper that did not come out. When I went to pick it up at the printing house in Kharkiv, it was Thursday. Early in the morning I went out, got into the car, and 2 rockets flew over my head. My son called me from Kharkiv and said, "Dad, don't go anywhere. The war has started." We took this issue of the newspaper after a year or more and distributed it to people in Bogoduhov. I did live broadcasts from here. What is most important? Why do I think it was an attack aimed at us? Because from the first day of the war, when the newspaper stopped being published, we recorded videos and told where it was shelling from. If you imagine the first weeks of that invasion, the people did not believe that the Russians could shoot at us. Everything is very simple. Here, Zolochiv. Here, Kozacha Lopan. They walked from that side and flew from that side. And when the debris flew here, it was clear from which side the projectile came. Then we found very often, if you know what grad is, the block from it falls from the direction from which it flew. As an arrow sticks and points with its tail to the place from which it flew, and it has always been Russia. I am convinced that this shelling was from Russia. Like all the attacks on our Zolochiv, it was the Russians who fired at us. I am convinced that they were trying to shut down the media that had been telling the truth about the war since its earliest days. I am convinced that even today, if I declassify the location of my editorial office, I can be shot at. Drones are flying towards us now. I am sure that there are enemies who corrected that fire. That day, April 1st, there were 2 shots from self-propelled guns, and they flew, for some reason, only here. They shot during the period of time when I was sitting at work, when I was supposed to sit at the desk, because I always came to work at 8:30, and left somewhere at the beginning of 1 o'clock in the day. On December 30th, a rocket attack was carried out on the Kharkiv Palace Hotel in the central part of the city of Kharkiv. There were guests in the hotel. Among them were foreign journalists. A citizen of Ukraine, who is a journalist of the German publication ZDF, was injured during this rocket attack. She received bruises, closed rib fractures, was in a state of shock. That is, this woman was one of the injured journalists. The shelling was carried out by S-300 missiles from the territory of the Belgorod region. The Simon television and radio company also received significant damage. Its office, studio, and production house are located a few tens of meters from Kharkiv Palace. With the beginning of the war, all our journalists worked and covered the events that took place in the city. On December 30th, there was a rocket attack from the Belgorod region, as the law enforcement officers established. They got to the hotel. There were foreign journalists who were affected, staff and ordinary passers-by. I left the hotel about 2 or 3 hours before the Russian missiles hit. The studio of the Simon TV channel was completely destroyed. The newsroom, editing rooms, many equipment were damaged. Here we had a studio that was completely destroyed. Here we had a broadcast. We did online broadcasts. Interviews were recorded here. Here, too, one apartment has been survived. The blow on December 30th is like a blow in the back, when journalists are simply not allowed to perform their professional duties. They crushed our studio, beat the equipment. After the blow, there is no longer even an opportunity to work from the studio. It is not possible to work at all on Simon. On January 10th, the Park Hotel was shelled. 2 journalists were among the other victims of the explosion. He is a citizen of Georgia, a journalist of the Turkish publication Anadolu, and a photo correspondent of the same publication. She is a citizen of Turkey. I talked to my wife at night. It was already 22:25, and the first explosion occurred 7–10 minutes later. Of course, I did not expect this. I was sitting next to the computer when the first explosion rang out. The wave was such that I could not hear for several seconds. Tried to get up and find out what happened, and immediately a second explosion. Then I heard more explosions, but they were probably exploding cars that were in the parking lot opposite. Our car was also parked there. When we choose a place, be it a hotel or an apartment, we always choose carefully. If I had noticed the military somewhere nearby, I would not have stayed there. When you go somewhere, even if it is not a familiar place, you still ask someone, who lives there? All I noticed were international journalists. We become acquainted, and stayed in this hotel several times with our group. We always trusted and were calm.
В обох перелічених готелях, по яким були нанесені ракетні удари, дуже часто зупинялися іноземні журналісти.
Foreign journalists very often stayed in both hotels that were hit. In addition, there was a short period of time between these shellings. Therefore, perhaps the Russians wanted to intimidate foreign journalists who are in the territory of the region. Since they all communicate with each other, hitting hotels where there are a lot of journalists may indicate that journalists were the Russians' target in these missile attacks. In order for them to work less on the territory of Ukraine, to cover less of Russia's war against Ukraine. Or they had some depressed, intimidated rhetoric during their reports. The goal could be both their physical elimination by killing and moral and psychological influence with the help of missile strikes. We found this hotel and were very pleased because it is quiet. What I noticed was that journalists often stopped here. There is a constant stream of journalists. New ones are arriving. That is, journalists are not uncommon there. They make up half or a third of all customers of these hotels. This time, I didn't meet any of the journalists, but a young girl with blood on her face said she was a journalist. In this situation was also used the S-300 missile launched from the territory of the Belgorod region. Literally yesterday, there were attempts by the Russians to destroy television and radio broadcasting in the region, destroy or deteriorate. A series of rocket attacks were carried out in the region and the city. In the Shevchenkivsky district, a blow was struck by the Shaheds. They were also used in the Kegichivska Hromada, Lozova, and Burluk, where they tried to damage elements and equipment for television and radio broadcasting. It is very important to mention the obvious now. If we do not show the fact, then the Russians show it, and they serve it as it is profitable for them. This is the main reason why I I am convinced. It was for this reason that there were 2 strikes that day, according to the editorial office. As for shelling, missile strikes, and mortar strikes, these are all war crimes. They qualify under Article 438 of the Criminal Code, violation of the laws and customs of war. In particular, the Geneva Convention. Now we are again, with even greater enthusiasm, taking up our business.